stepping into a time machine and traveling back 200 million years. You open the door and you're greeted not by cities, roads, or humans, but by towering forests, enormous dinosaurs, roaring volcanoes, and warm oceans stretching farther than you can see. This was Earth during the Jurassic Period, a world breathtakingly alive, wild beyond imagination, crucial to the story of life on our planet. Today, let's journey back in time and explore what our world looked like long before we ever walked on it. Picture this: step outside tomorrow and the air feels different. Thicker, warmer, heavier with life. And suddenly you realize you're not in your city or your town anymore. There are no cars, no concrete roads, no skyscrapers. There are no humans at all. Instead, you're surrounded by colossal forests, the ground trembles beneath your feet, and somewhere in the distance rumbles as volcanoes belch fire into a hazy sky. You smell wet soil and ocean salt on the wind. The world feels raw, fresh, untouched. Welcome to Earth during the Jurassic Period. A world that would make our modern planet look like a sanitized toy model. This wasn't a time of quiet wilderness. This was a time of rebirth after disaster, a time of heat and humidity so intense that it wrapped the planet like a warm blanket. And unlike the fragile climate anxieties of our age, where a few degrees stir global panic, the Jurassic didn't blush at heat. It bathed in it. The planet had just survived one of its darkest hours, mass extinction, that nearly flattened life itself. But nature did what it always does when humans aren't meddling. It bounced back with an attitude. To imagine the scale of destruction that came before. Up to 95% of marine species wiped out, 70% of land life gone. Imagine if you woke up one morning and all you saw was silence. Empty oceans, lifeless plains. That's where life started again. Not from comfort, from catastrophe. And that, right away, should make us stop. Because in our world today, sulk when we fry drops or complain that our coffee isn't hot enough. But life 200 million years ago didn't just face setbacks. It faced annihilation. And it didn't whimper. It rose. It rebuilt. It flourished. There's something brutally inspiring about that. It reminds us that sometimes the most extraordinary chapters begin after the darkest pages. Life didn't tiptoe back, exploded across the earth like a grand, defiant symphony. The message: devastation isn't always the end. Sometimes it's the prelude. Now, let's talk climate. Today, over half-degree temperature rises, and rightly so. It threatens our ice caps, our food supplies, our cities. But back then, the Earth had no ice caps to melt. None. Not a frozen polar cap in sight. The entire world was warm, almost tropical from pole to pole. If you live in a place with frosty winters, forget everything you know. Jurassic climate was like living permanently inside the world's most humid greenhouse. Modern-day Florida, Southeast Asia, those are cute starter packs. The Jurassic was global sauna mode. Lush green everywhere, warm seas that wrapped the continents like a shimmering blue silk sheet, air that hugged the skin like a warm ocean breeze. There wasn't winter like you know it. Seasons were far gentler. If anything, the planet felt generous, nourishing, almost indulgent in its warmth. And with that warmth came life in overwhelming abundance. Giant trees stretching toward the sky like natural cathedrals, ferns the size of minivans, insects buzzing thick in the air. The world wasn't just alive, it was overflowing with life, pressing forward, determined to fill every crevice, every space, every opportunity. Compared to that, our manicured parks and trimmed suburban lawns look embarrassingly tame. Back then, nature didn't whisper, it roared. And yet, it was not perfect peace. The earth was restless. Think of the ground beneath your feet shifting, cracking, stretching. The supercontinent Pangaea. Imagine all the world's continents mashed together like the ultimate global puzzle, began tearing apart. Landmasses drifted, slow but unstoppable, pulled by forces deep beneath Earth's crust. If you stood there back then, you wouldn't see continents slide like skating rinks, but the landscape changed under generations. Ocean waters carved their way in. Eventually, these movements would create the Atlantic Ocean, a body of water that today powers climate systems, economies, entire cultures. Back then, it was just beginning, the early heartbeat of a future world. Can we pause to appreciate that? We live in a world obsessed with control. Controlling climate, controlling technology, controlling each other's opinions. And yet, 200 million years ago, the Earth itself tore apart continents without hesitation. It didn't ask permission. It didn't hold votes. Moved because it had to. Because creation often comes only after disruption. There's a fierce, uncomfortable truth in that. Growth isn't peaceful. Evolution isn't polite. Earth knew that then, and it knows it now. And while continents shifted, skies above were thick with moisture. Picture rainforests without borders, not patches. Entire continents draped in emerald green, rivers twisting like silver snakes, clouds blooming with monsoon power. Storms rolled across the lands with dramatic authority, breathed heavy, warm breaths, and life thrived under it all. Not delicate, pampered life, robust, stubborn, relentless life. In our world, we fear heat waves. Our modern systems can't handle them. But the Jurassic, it embraced heat. It was designed for it. Life adapted to warmth like a dancer to music. Giant creatures roamed. Forests soared. And the atmosphere, thick with carbon dioxide, fed plant growth like rocket fuel. Imagine a world where air itself is a growth accelerator. We worry about coal as a poison to our climate. And again, we're right. But during the Jurassic, that same gas powered a botanical explosion. The planet wasn't choking. It was blooming. Of course, the creatures and plants then evolved for that environment, an environment we could not survive in. But the shock value is important. The same planet can host many versions of life, many realities, many eras. We are not the Earth's only chapter, just one line in its enormous story. And this is where it becomes painfully humbling. Today, to believe we are the pinnacle, the final edition, the finished product. But if the Jurassic teaches anything, it's this: Earth doesn't wait for us. It evolves. It adapts. It survives. Whether we do or not is another question entirely. Stand back for a moment and imagine watching the supercontinent slowly fracture. A crack forms, invisible at first, then widening over centuries. Water seeps in. A shallow sea expands. The Earth changes shape as if someone is rearranging continents like puzzle pieces. It's dramatic, it's unstoppable, and it's magnificent. All the while, life surges forward, filling new habitats, inventing new survival strategies, reshaping ecosystems with relentless creativity. What fascinates me most is that this era, for all its grandeur, began in ashes. From the brink of nothingness, the world forged abundance. There's a powerful lesson buried in those ancient soils. You cannot measure the future by the present's despair. Nature didn't say, everything's ruined. Let's give up. It said, let's rebuild. Bigger, wilder, stronger. That's a mindset humanity could use today, don't you think? We currently live in a world where one bad headline sends everyone spiraling. We drown in negativity, convinced that a challenge equals doom. But 200 million years ago, challenge forged a renaissance. It didn't break the world. It transformed it. That warm Jurassic planet was a symbol, not just of life, but of resilience, defiance, renewal. The world said, destruction happened, yes, But watch me roar again. Imagine if we approached our problems that way. Wars, climate change, inequality, personal setbacks. Instead of collapsing into fear or cynicism, we did what the Earth did. We adapted. We evolved. We rebuilt with fire in our veins and determination in our bones. Jurassic wasn't gentle, but it was glorious. And glory rarely comes from comfort. It comes from surviving the storm and deciding you won't just stand. You'll grow taller. So yes, Jurassic was hot. Yes, it was wild. Yes, it was intimidating. But it was alive in ways our modern convenience-wrapped, phone-obsessed lives can barely comprehend. It was a testament to the idea that life is not fragile. It is spectacularly, fiercely resilient, and when pushed to the brink, it doesn't fade, it rises. We weren't there, no humans. Cities, no noise pollution, no billboards, no social media outrages, just Earth in its raw, unapologetic form. Powerful, creative, unstoppable. And quite frankly, it puts us in our place. We think we own the planet. The Jurassic laughs at that. We are guests, temporary tenants. The Earth survived global firestorms, mass extinctions, exploding mountains, continents ripping apart. Survive us too, with or without our cooperation. The question, then, is not whether Earth can continue. It's whether we can keep up, whether we can adapt with the same courage and ferocity that life showed after the extinction before the Jurassic. Whether we can reinvent instead of retreat, whether we can be survivors, not victims. Because if the Jurassic teaches anything worth engraving into your bones, it's this: life doesn't bow to hardship, it answers it. Ancient heat, in that wild rebirth, the planet made a promise: as long as there is sunlight and soil, life will fight to exist. And that's the legacy we inherited. Not frailty, but fierce resilience. We don't come from comfort. We come from survival, strength, and evolution forged in fire and storm. So remember it, every time you doubt, every time the world feels heavy, every time you think collapse is certain. Somewhere in your DNA is the story of a world that didn't just endure catastrophe. It used it as fuel to create giants, forests, oceans, birds, and futures unimaginable. Jurassic wasn't just a period. It was a statement: life goes on, not quietly, but magnificently. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the ocean you know today. Warm beaches with families splashing in the waves, calm, blue horizons where ships glide across like floating cities, dolphins leaping, seagulls calling, coral reefs vibrant and busy like underwater metropolises. We think we understand the sea because we spend our summers beside it, build our lives near it, holiday around it, romanticize it in postcards and paintings. But that ocean, our ocean, is a gentle whisper compared to what the world knew during the Jurassic Period. Imagine stepping back 200 million years. There are no sailboats, no cruise liners, no plastic drifting, no sunbathers applying lotion on the sand. Instead, you stand at the edge of a vast, warm, endless sea, one that stretches beyond sight and imagination. The air is thick with salt and life, and instead of the familiar rhythm of waves, ocean feels alive in a way that borders on intimidating. As if the sea itself is breathing with every pulse of the tide. The Jurassic Ocean wasn't a place you visited for relaxation. It was a kingdom, powerful, mysterious, and ruled by creatures that make modern sharks look almost polite. Water temperatures were warmer than ours, currents were wilder, the oceans covered more of the planet's surface. The sea was Earth's heart then, pumping nutrients, life, energy, and future possibility through every corner of the world. When you look beneath the surface, you didn't see dolphins or whales. You saw titans, the ichthyosaur. Imagine a dolphin-shaped predator, but stretched longer, sleeker, with eyes as big as dinner plates and jaws strong enough to snap bones like chalk. They moved with terrifying elegance, slicing through water with speed that belonged in a racing story, not biology. Scientists find their fossils today where deserts now stand. Utah, Nevada, the English coast, remind us that where we now walk on land was once an ocean kingdom. Think about that the next time you hike through a dusty canyon once, that ground was prowled by sea dragons. Then there were the plesiosaurs, long, necked hunters gliding like silent spirits. Necks could stretch farther than your outstretched arms multiple times over, their paddles sweeping through water like giant wings. People today still whisper myths of the Loch Ness monster, and that isn't by accident. Human imagination clings to ancient shapes. Somewhere deep in our evolutionary memory, we recognize that silhouette, a serpentine neck emerging from the waves, a shape older than myth itself. If you dared dive deeper, deeper than sunlight can reach, you entered a silent cathedral of ancient marine shadows. Here swam mosasaur ancestors, early sharks, armored fish with jaws built for crushing shells and bone. It was a world where survival wasn't questioned, it was earned. Every moment, every breath, constant test written by evolution's most unforgiving hand. And yet, it was beautiful. Alien, yes. Intense, absolutely. But beautiful in the way raw nature always is. Before we soften it with tourism brochures and beach umbrellas, imagine reefs made not of coral, but sponges and strange, flower-like animals waving in currents, like underwater gardens designed by someone who never heard of Earth and wanted to invent beauty from scratch. Imagine schools of ammonites, spiral-shelled creatures twirling like ancient seashell clocks, moving in patterns that would make ballet choreographers jealous. Those ammonites, by the way, everywhere, so abundant that when paleontologists dig through rock layers today, they often use ammonite fossils like timestamps. Every spiral shell in stone whispers, "This world once belonged to us." And their descendants, their delicate cousins, still wash up on beaches today. Think of that the next time you pick up a seashell. Some designs don't disappear. They evolve, survive, persist. The Jurassic didn't vanish. Echoes of it still curl in the palm of your hand. This ocean world was not just a stage for predators. It was Earth's laboratory. Life was experimenting wildly, fearlessly, creatively. New species constantly emerging, branching out, trying new shapes, new strategies. That's the magic of warm, nutrient-rich seas. They don't just sustain life. They encourage innovation. The first true coral reefs were forming, built not for tourists with snorkels, but for survival, shelter, community. Reefs are cities, when you think about it. Ancient apartment complexes where thousands of species coexist, compete, cooperate. And in the Jurassic, these underwater cities were beginning to rise like the first skyline in a world destined for greatness. It's humbling, isn't it, to realize that long before our skyscrapers pierced clouds, reefs were building underwater towers of symbiosis. Life was engineering brilliance without steel, glass, or human ego. Didn't need us. It thrived without us. And yet, even in that era, life faced danger. Volcanic activity was fierce, sending minerals and nutrients spiraling into the ocean, feeding plankton blooms that fed fish, that fed reptiles, that fed giants. But volcanoes also darkened skies, heated waters, poisoned environments. The Jurassic Sea was not a paradise. Creation, adaptation, loss, rebirth, repeated over millions of years. The ocean gives, the ocean tests, the ocean transforms, always has. When you imagine these seas, you must remove the concept of human safety. No lifeguards, no quiet waves gently kissing the shore, no shallow tide pools for children to explore. Instead, Waves crashed with the force of untamed energy. Storms battered coastlines untouched by mankind. Lightning split the sky over vast watery kingdoms, illuminating silhouettes of predators just beneath the surface. A storm at sea then wasn't a news story. It was a theater of survival. Yet, for all the danger, Jurassic Ocean was abundance incarnate. Food chains pulsed with life plankton feeding fish, fish feeding reptiles, reptiles ruling waters, new species rising endlessly. The sea in this era was like a booming city during a golden age, everything expanding, evolving, discovering. And unlike human cities, this growth didn't dilute the environment. It enriched it. The more life there was, the more life could flourish. Every death fed a new beginning. Every shift in climate or current sculpted another opportunity, and as continents drifted apart, new shallow seas formed between them. Warm nurseries teeming with life. Shallow water is where evolution often moves fastest. Sunlight hits, plants grow, fish gather, predators follow, ecosystems bloom like fireworks. It's as if the planet was spreading out a canvas and saying, "Let's see what life can paint here." And it painted with confidence, with boldness, with imagination we humans rarely allow ourselves. We create within rules. Nature creates until rules are forced into existence. We innovate for profit or convenience. The Jurassic Ocean innovated because existence itself demanded creativity. And yet, let's bring this home. This ancient ocean still touches our present world. Fossils of ichthyosaurs lie in dry mountain rock because what is stone today was seabed yesterday. Himalayan peaks hold ammonite shells because India once floated far away and slammed into Asia, lifting ancient seed to the sky. Life moves. Earth moves. Nothing stays still. Our planet is not a museum. It is a story constantly rewriting itself. We walk city streets believing they are forever, yet entire oceans have risen, fallen, shifted, and returned long before our species even appeared. That is not frightening. It's awakening. Reminds us that our world is not fragile, but powerful, dynamic, vast beyond comprehension, and we, tiny, recent, curious humans, are just beginning to understand the deep chapters written beneath our feet and under our waves. But here's something even more personal. Think about the courage of those early marine creatures. Think about living in a world with predators at every turn, with constant change, with currents shifting, continents moving, climates transforming, and life still said, yes. Life still pushed forward. Life still leaped, swam, hunted, birthed, survived. If ancient oceans teach us anything, it's resilience. The soft resilience we post in motivational quotes, but real resilience. The kind that faces uncertainty and dives in any way. The kind that adapts without complaint. That treats challenge as fuel. We come from that lineage. That strength sits inside us. When you feel overwhelmed, remember, your ancestors did not merely survive. They thrived in oceans ruled by monsters. Your existence is proof that resilience is not a slogan. It is your inheritance. Think of this next time you stand at the beach and stare at the horizon. Beneath those waves lies a history deeper than our fears, older than our doubts, richer than our imagination. Oceans remember. They remember ammonites swirling in prehistoric tides. They remember reptilian giants slicing through currents. They remember continents drifting like ships. Remember warmth so intense it wrapped the planet in green, life bursting from every drop of water. They remember where we come from, even if we forget. So when we look at the sea now, polluted in places, warming, struggling, we should not just see crisis, we should see responsibility, inspiration. A legacy worth honoring, not ruining. Because if ancient oceans could birth giants, innovation courage, and endless resilience, then surely we can summon that same strength to protect the world we inherited from those waters. Jurassic Sea was not simply water. It was life in its boldest form, wild, creative, unstoppable, and it still whispers to us through fossils, through waves, through quiet moments when we stand barefoot in surf and feel something ancient stirring inside us, a reminder that life does not just endure, it rises. Take a moment, breathe in, imagine the earth shaking under your feet. Not from a truck passing by, not from city construction or subway rumble. Imagine the ground trembling because something colossal is walking across it. A shadow stretches across you, blocking the sun. Leaves rustle, birds scatter, and suddenly you feel very, very small. That was life during the Jurassic Period, a world ruled by giants so extraordinary, so majestic, that even our wildest movies can barely do them justice. This was their time, their planet, and long before the famous T-Rex ever roared, the Jurassic was dominated by creatures that redefined a scale, power, and presence. The first thing people always ask is, what did dinosaurs really look like? But the better question is, what did it feel like to live in their world? Let's not think academically. Let's experience it. Picture a forest so dense and towering that sunlight filters through like golden dust beams. There's a heavy, humid stillness, the kind that settles before something enormous enters. Leaves begin to tremble, twigs snap, and a rhythmic thunder grows louder. Then, emerging through the trees like living mountains, come the sauropods, titans like Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus. Necks stretch upward like living cranes, sweeping across treetops with effortless grace. Their legs are columns, thicker than ancient stone pillars. Every step they take compresses soil, reshaping the forest floor like the earth itself is kneeling under their weight. These creatures weren't just animals, they were moving ecosystems. Single adult sauropod could consume hundreds of pounds of plants a day. Imagine something that requires an entire tree's worth of leaves just to get breakfast started. And yet, nothing about them feels monstrous. If anything, there's a kind of gentle nobility, a slow, almost meditative power. They didn't hunt, they didn't kill for meat. They simply existed, massive, peaceful gardeners of the Jurassic world, shaping forests the way elephants and giraffes shape African landscapes today. Then there's the comparison to humans. We often stand tall in our cities, convinced of our dominance, boasting about skyscrapers, aircraft, and engineering marvels. If you stood next to a Diplodocus, you wouldn't feel dominant. You'd feel humbled, awestruck, like you stumbled into nature's cathedral and were standing before something ancient, sacred, breathtaking. We build towers, nature built giants. Now picture a different scene. The sun is setting, casting deep amber across a vast plain. Herds of herbivorous dinosaurs move in rhythm, their footsteps stirring dust into the warm air. They travel in groups, family units, protective circles, because even giants need each other. Is something universally moving about that image creatures millions of years gone, following instincts we still recognize today, safety in numbers. Parents guiding young, vigilance as the orange light fades, knowing danger waits in shadows. And danger had a name in the Jurassic, Allosaurus. Sleek, powerful, built like the Earth's answer to a lion mixed with a shark and wrapped in muscle and instinct. Wasn't the largest predator ever, not like the T-Rex that would come millions of years later, but make no mistake, it was lethal, fast, strategic, pack-smart. Picture three of them, glinting bodies tense like coiled springs. They stalk, communicate with low growls, flank a herd, test the weak. It is primal, raw, real, nature's law long before humans ever tried to rewrite it. And what is truly fascinating, what truly hits you, is that this drama, this beauty, this struggle for life and survival existed without any audience. No humans cheering for the underdog, no cameras capturing slow-motion chases. It was just life, playing out authentically, magnificently, unobserved. The world didn't need us to be spectacular. It already was. Imagine the soundscape, not quiet like museums want us to believe. No, the Jurassic was loud, the booming steps of sauropods vibrating through ground, the trumpeting calls echoing through valleys, insects buzzing, wind crashing through giant ferns, predators roaring across plains with a force that shook birds from branches. Life back then wasn't subtle, it was symphonic. And in that orchestra of survival, every creature had a role. And yet, with all that power, there was vulnerability too. A newborn sauropod, barely hatched, wobbling on fragile legs, tiny compared to its mother, yet already bigger than most modern animals. Herds circling to protect it, tails whipping in warning arcs. Predators watching, calculating, waiting for a lapse. Even the giant faced fear, danger, and uncertainty. The Jurassic teaches us something profound. Even the mighty are not immune to struggle, and survival isn't guaranteed by strength alone. It requires community, awareness, instinct, sometimes sheer stubborn will. People often romanticize dinosaurs as monsters, as oversized beasts stomping around without purpose. But they weren't villains. They weren't props. They were living beings navigating a world that demanded resilience. They ate, raised young, traveled, fought, protected one another, and died. They lived lives. Complex, instinctive, meaningful in their own ancient way. They remind us that existence before humanity wasn't empty. It was rich, layered emotion in a way we can't measure with fossils alone. And yes, there were moments of violence, teeth sinking into flesh, claws ripping through scales, life ending in sudden brutality. But nature has always balanced beauty and brutality. Today it's lions hunting zebras, wolves chasing elk, hawks capturing mice. It's not cruelty, it's survival. And in that truth lies a lesson the world doesn't apologize for being real, never has. And then imagine the quieter moments. A sauropod standing in a lake, tail swaying gently, half submerged to cool its massive body as dragonflies buzz above the water. Small dinosaurs nibbling plants at the forest edge. The soft rustle of leaves as wind passes through giant cycads. Life wasn't always roaring. Sometimes it whispered. And in those whispers, something amazing was happening. Evolution experimenting boldly. Feathers began appearing. Not the bright show-off feathers of birds today, but soft primitive ones on small predators, early spark of a future sky-conquering idea. Imagine watching a feathered dinosaur glide between trees, a hint of wings before wings truly existed. The Jurassic wasn't just a time of giants, it was a cradle of flight, of innovation, of biological creativity. Life wasn't simply surviving, it was dreaming forward. It's almost emotional to think about. The first feathers, first glides, first attempts to turn gravity into opportunity. If you've ever seen a child take their first steps, know that feeling, the trembling, the hesitation, the courage to try. That moment existed in the Jurassic, just not with humans. Evolution itself took its first step toward the sky. Perhaps the most important truth: dinosaurs were not failures. They ruled the planet for over 150 million years. They didn't fade because they were weak. The world changed dramatically. Their chapter ended not in defeat, but in transformation. And in their absence, new life emerged, eventually leading to us. But never mistake our existence as proof of superiority. Here not because they were inadequate, but because time keeps moving, worlds keep shifting, and nature keeps writing new chapters. One day, we too will be a chapter, a layer of rock, a memory Earth outgrew. And that reality shouldn't frighten us. It should humble us, inspire us, remind us to live with awe rather than arrogance. So when you picture the Jurassic and its dinosaurs, do not reduce them to museum skeletons or toy figures. See them as they were: powerful, vulnerable, emotional, magnificent. Creatures that shaped Earth long before humans, that walked landscapes untouched by cities, that breathed air free of pollution, that lived in harmony with a wild world, not against it, not relics. They are reminders that life is grander than our timeline, that nature's imagination exceeds our own, and that the world doesn't belong to us alone. Remind us that greatness isn't measured by intelligence alone, or technology, or cities. Sometimes greatness is a heartbeat echoing through the earth as a giant walks. Sometimes it is a herd protecting its young. Sometimes it is a predator surviving another day. And sometimes greatness is simply existing with purpose in a world that demands strength. The dinosaurs tell a story, not of monsters, but of majesty. Not of extinction, but of existence so powerful it still ripples through our imagination millions of years later. If their world teaches us anything, it is this: life is not quiet, not small, not meant to be contained. Life, when given a chance, becomes extraordinary. Close your eyes and forget everything you know about forests. Erase the image of oak trees in quiet parks, the maple-lined streets of neighborhoods, the flower beds, lawns, and garden centers. Let go of the tame and trimmed nature we've curated, the nature that fits neatly between sidewalks and fences. The Jurassic world was no manicured landscape. It was a raw, unfiltered, tamed wilderness, a living cathedral built not for human comfort, but for life to flourish in its wildest, most ambitious form. Imagine stepping into that world, brushing aside a curtain of fronds taller than your body. The air is thick with humidity, heavy with the scent of sap and earth. Rich, ancient soil breathing life into every corner. This isn't a cozy forest. It's towering, overwhelming, alive in every direction. The plants don't wait politely for your attention. They command it. Rise above you like ancient guardians, watching, growing, spreading, claiming sunlight in an endless competition of existence. This is a world without flowers, no delicate petals, no blossoms dotting the ground, no sweet fragrance drifting on the breeze, no roses, no daisies, no orchids. The beauty here is primal. Ferns unfurl like feathered fans, giant horsetails stand tall like natural spears, and cycads, those like time travelers, sit proudly like royal sentinels. These plants have existed longer than human memory, longer than our civilizations, longer even than our dreams of history. When you see a cycad in a botanical garden today, understand you are not looking at a plant. Looking at survival whispering across 200 million years, and above you, stretching into the sky like nature's skyscrapers, stand the towering conifers, ancient cousins of pine and cedar, but far grander, thicker, more dominating. Trunks soar upward like ancient stone columns holding up a ceiling of green that filters sunlight into golden shards. Every beam of light feels like a blessing. Plant competes fiercely to touch it. There is no softness here. Light is life, and life must fight for every drop. As you stand there, surrounded by walls of green, you realize something profound. These plants weren't background scenery. They were the architects of life. They shaped the air, the soil, the climate. Giants, not just with leaves to chew, but oxygen to breathe. The air would feel different, richer, almost sweet with life, thick with moisture. Hail deeply and feel the forest settle into your lungs like a living presence. These plants didn't just grow, they ruled. Listen carefully. You hear dripping water, constant, rhythmic. The world then wasn't quiet. Leaves brushed together like whispers of ancient languages. Wind rushed through conifer crowns like ocean waves. Insects buzzed in clouds dense enough to change the sound of the air around you. Life didn't simply exist. It pulsed, surged, hummed. You were never alone in a Jurassic forest. The world breathed beside you. Now picture something familiar. Walking down a lush trail today, perhaps in a rainforest. Vines twist around branches, leaves drip dew, birds call overhead. Feels magical, ancient, sacred. Now amplify that by 1,000, because Jurassic forests weren't just old. They were primal, untouched by human ambition, unbroken by axes or roads or farms. No clearings, no picnic tables, no hiking paths. The wild didn't bend. It didn't yield. You moved through it as a guest, if it allowed you in at all. Ground beneath your feet would be soft, damp, layered with fallen fronds and thick mats of moss. Every step released the scent of wet earth and decaying plant matter. Not unpleasant, grounding, raw, real. Life should smell like this, shouldn't it? Rich, honest, full of history. Today we spray synthetic pine scent in our cars. Back then, the world was perfume, moss and bark and sap and breath. And towering through this world moved the plant eaters, the browsers and grazers, the titans who swept their long necks across canopies like nature's cranes harvesting sunlight turned to leaves. Imagine a Brachiosaurus standing among conifers, head rising into branches like an ancient lighthouse. It stretches its long neck, plucks a cluster of needles, and chews slowly, thoughtfully, as if savoring the gift of green. The trees sway not from wind, but from giants feeding, and every fallen branch and crushed plant becomes nourishment for the soil below. Nothing wasted. Nothing taken without giving back. Nature's cycle, unbroken, balanced, sacred. We often picture dinosaurs, but forget the world that sustained them. We marvel at their size, rarely acknowledge the forests that built their bodies leaf by leaf, breath by breath. Without these plants, those giants would never have been possible. When we talk about mighty creatures, we should whisper gratitude to the quiet power that made them strong, the silent photosynthesis that fed empires of life long before humans named anything. And here's the emotional truth from a world where nature didn't just exist, it dominated. It didn't bow to us. We bowed to it. Somewhere along the line, we forgot that. We carved mountains, drained rivers, ancient trees, replanted flat lawns where forests once stood. We replaced wildness with order, comfortable, predictable, safe, but something deep inside us still remembers. Why else do we travel to forests for peace? Why do we walk among trees to heal? Why do we plant gardens and keep houseplants like fragments of a forgotten memory? Because we are descendants of a green world. Our bodies remember breathing air born from ancient leaves. Our instincts remember being humbled by forests older than imagination. While there were no flowers, don't mistake that era as lacking beauty. Jurassic beauty was different, not delicate, but powerful. It was the beauty of endurance, of strength, survival sculpted over millions of years, ferns unfurling like living scrolls, moss blanketing stones like velvet, tree trunks thick as castle walls. It was grandeur, not glamour, majesty, not elegance. And there is something profoundly inspiring in that, beauty that doesn't need approval, validation, or admiration to exist. It simply grows because life demands expression. Every plant then was part of an unbreakable rhythm. Leaves unfurled, creatures fed, storms rolled in, lightning split ancient conifers, fires burned bright and fierce. And from the ashes, green rose again, not fragile, not timid, resilient. We talk about resilience today like it's rare, but look to the Jurassic. Resilience was not an idea, it was existence itself. Now think about grass, the humble backdrop of our modern world, the thing children roll in, athletes run across, homeowners obsessively water and trim. There was no grass then, not a single blade. The world didn't need it. Can you imagine a world without it? No lawns, no prairies, no sound of wind whispering through grass fields. That's how different this world was, familiar enough to feel real, alien enough to stun your imagination. So when you stand today in a park or hike a forest trail, remember, surrounded by ordinary plants, you're standing in the shadow of ancestors, survivors whose lineage stretches back to a world of giants. Every fern frond is a memory, pine needle a whisper, every cycad a time capsule. These plants carry history in their veins, millions of years of trial, adaptation, triumph, and maybe, just maybe, the world isn't asking us to save nature. Maybe it's reminding us that nature has always been saving us, feeding us, sheltering us, oxygenating us, grounding us, humbling us. The Jurassic Forest tells us something essential: life thrives when wildness is allowed to breathe, when ecosystems are trusted to balance themselves, when we stop carving up the world like it belongs only to us. We weren't the first to walk this planet, and we won't be the last. But while we are here, perhaps we owe a debt to the forests before us, the ones that raised giants, weathered storms, rose from extinctions, and carried the torch of life across ages. Perhaps protecting nature isn't charity. Perhaps it is heritage. Perhaps it is identity. And perhaps the greatest lesson from that deep, emerald ancient world is simple: life grows toward light, even when buried, even after catastrophe, even when no one is watching. No flowers, no fragrance, no applause, just life choosing to rise again and again, proving that strength can be silent, beauty can be primal, and hope can be green. Close your eyes and picture the sky, not the sky you know, with jet trails scratching white lines across blue emptiness, not the sound of engines humming or helicopters chopping the air. I mean a sky long before we ever dreamed of climbing into it. Sky untouched, sacred, unclaimed territory. For millions of years during the Jurassic, that sky belonged only to the wind and the clouds. Nothing human had ever pierced it. Nothing had ever challenged its freedom. It was a kingdom waiting for a ruler, a vast stage waiting for a performer brave enough to leap. And then, one day, something extraordinary happened. A creature stood on a branch, perhaps trembling, perhaps certain, and spread feathered arms, not wings as we know them today, honed by millions of years of refinement, but proto-wings, invention, half accident, feathers, those delicate miracles, rustling softly in the prehistoric breeze, eyes scanning an open world filled with giants below. And then it jumped, a leap into uncertainty, into gravity's grip, into possibility. That leap, awkward, fragile, ridiculous, magnificent, changed the course of life forever. Because in that moment, Earth discovered flight. Think about that, the very first time a living being left the ground, not by accident, not by falling, but by choosing to rise. That moment is humanity's great grandparent in spirit. It is the ancestor of every airplane takeoff, every rocket ignition, every child spreading their arms pretending to fly. Before feathers owned the sky, we crawled and we walked and we roared. But flight was rebellion. Flight was audacity. Flight was life looking up and saying, "Want more?" Imagine being there. The forests hush. The world seems to hold its breath. Below, giant dinosaurs graze and stomp and bellow, their heavy bodies chained to the earth. Above, something small, agile, almost fragile brushes the air with silent strokes. The contrast is stunning. Strength below, freedom above. Giants of muscle ruled the land. This delicate pioneer, maybe the size of a raven, ruled possibility, Archaeopteryx. The name alone feels mythic, like something carved on ancient stone. We know it not from stories, but from stone impressions. Fossils so exquisite, they feel like nature signing its own love letter to evolution. Delicate feather imprints, like whispers pressed into limestone. Bones balancing the line between reptile and bird, teeth in a beak, claws on wings, a long reptilian tail trailing like a reminder of origins. It did not appear perfect, did not soar like an eagle or glide like a hawk. But its existence was enough to prove a truth we too often forget: greatness begins awkwardly. That creature's first attempt at flight wasn't cinematic. It wasn't graceful or heroic. It was probably clumsy, flapping desperately between branches, gliding short distances, crashing more often than landing. And yet, it kept going. It kept trying. It kept rising. Because life's greatest breakthroughs don't arrive fully formed. They struggle, they wobble, they fail, they rise again. The first bird wasn't just learning to fly, it was teaching the world what courage looks like. Feathers themselves are miracles. We see birds daily. We forget the marvel that is a feather, lightweight yet strong, flexible yet structured, able to insulate warmth, repel water, display beauty, and lift a body into the air. A single feather can withstand storms and gleam with color. Nature didn't need feathers to be beautiful, but it made them anyway. And some of the first feathers weren't even for flight. They may have begun as insulation or as a way to show off and attract a mate. Proof that life always seems to create beauty before it creates necessity. Beauty, it seems, is ancient. Every time a modern bird takes flight, a sparrow lifting off a windowsill, an owl gliding at dusk, a hummingbird hovering like a heartbeat, you are witnessing the echo of that Jurassic leap. Every feather that catches sunlight, every flock that migrates thousands of miles, every chick that falls from a nest and learns to rise again. It all began with a timid glide among prehistoric branches. The sky we take for granted today was earned, not given. Think about the courage of evolution, to change, to adapt, to try something wildly new, to risk failure in pursuit of possibility. We talk about innovation like it's a modern invention. Innovation is ancient. Flight didn't begin in workshops or labs. It started in forests, in silence, in feathers and fear and daring. Just like that first bird didn't glide like a falcon on day one, we too rarely start perfect. We stumble, we doubt, we fall. But falling is the tax life charges for rising. Rising is always worth the cost. Consider how much we owe that moment in the Jurassic. Flight transformed ecosystems. Suddenly, the world gained eyes in the sky. Seeds could be carried far beyond their birthplace. New predators emerged, silent, swift, unpredictable. Insects could no longer feel safe in the open air. The sky, once empty, a battlefield, a sanctuary, a highway, a playground. The evolution of birds reshaped life as profoundly as the rise of giant dinosaurs did. It was not loud, but it was revolutionary. There's something deeply emotional in that image, a tiny creature rising above giants. It reminds us that being the biggest doesn't mean being the most powerful. Sometimes power is in agility, in innovation, in the willingness to do what no one else has dared. When you watch pigeons flutter in a city square or a falcon dive through wind like a lightning bolt, remember that ability was born not from brute strength, but from imagination, the imagination of nature itself, the boldness to say, "Why stay on the ground?" Even today, birds captivate us not simply because they fly, because they embody freedom. We envy them. We point at planes in the sky not because they're metal, but because they mimic wings. When a child runs with their arms stretched out pretending to soar, they're channeling a dream older than humanity itself. A dream first lived by a creature small enough to fit in your hands, trembling on a branch in a Jurassic forest. And yet, what if that first creature had never jumped? What if it had stayed safe, clinging to bark and branches, too afraid to trust its wings? We might never have had eagles, swans, hummingbirds, nightingales, macaws. We might never have known the beauty of migrations across oceans or the sound of wings slicing morning air. Progress requires risk. The sky rewards the brave. So what does this ancient story tell us today in a world of deadlines, screens, schedules, and safe routines? It reminds us that breakthroughs rarely start with confidence. They start with a leap. That uncertainty isn't a barrier, but a doorway. That we are descendants not just of survivors, but of leapers, of creatures who dared to fall in order to learn to rise. Whenever you hesitate before a decision, fear a new beginning, doubt your ability to change, remember that once upon a time, on a quiet Jurassic branch, a little feathered creature faced the same choice. Stay grounded in safety or trust the unknown, and because it chose to fly, the sky became part of Earth's story, and because it chose to fly, we too learned, millions of years later, to rise off the ground, first with feathers, then with wings of canvas, then steel, now dreams that reach beyond our own planet. We admire rockets blasting toward the stars, but their origin lies in feathers rustling before the dawn of humanity. We marvel at jetliners crossing oceans, but their path was paved by tiny wings beating against prehistoric air. Every airport runway, every hot air balloon, every soaring drone, all are spiritual descendants of that first leap of faith. And perhaps the most humbling truth is this flight wasn't inevitable. It was chosen, not consciously, not deliberately, but biologically, instinctively, bravely. Life didn't settle for the ground. It didn't obey gravity's command. It challenged it. And in doing so, it expanded what the world could be. When you watch birds tomorrow, perched on wires, sweeping across sunset skies, gliding effortlessly over waves, see more than feathers. See history. See rebellion. See the moment life decided the earth was not enough. See yourself reflected in millions of years of aspiration. Before we walked on the moon, before we crafted wings of metal, the dream of soaring lived inside feathers, and that dream began in the Jurassic. So the next time the wind lifts your hair, or you tilt your head back to watch a hawk circle overhead, or you hear the flutter of wings at dawn, remember that you carry the same spirit that once lifted a small creature above giants. We are not strangers to flight. We are heirs to it. The sky is not foreign to us. It is our inheritance. And every time we dare to rise, in whatever form that takes, that first fearless leap into a world where wings had never yet been tested, as we stand here now, far from the roars and towering giants, far from the steaming jungles and thunderous footsteps of the Jurassic, let us take a moment to breathe in the same air that once carried the cries of dinosaurs and the first trembling beats of feathered wings. The earth we walk on today is not separate from that world. It is built on its bones, shaped by its storms, nourished by its forests, inspired by its courage to evolve, to endure, and to rise. We have walked through a time when continents drifted like sleeping titans turning in their beds. We've felt the tremor of the ground under colossal feet, seen the emerald breath of ancient forests rising like cathedrals, and watched the sky welcome its very first pioneers. Fragile, feathered dreamers who dared to leap into the unknown. The Jurassic is not just history. It is a heartbeat echoing across time, a testament to life's fearless instinct to grow, to adapt, to fight, and to fly. And though we no longer live among brachiosaurs or hear pterosaurs crying across prehistoric coastlines, their legacy surrounds us. Every pine tree that stretches toward the sun, in every bird that glides across the horizon, in every breeze that whispers through the leaves, in every mountain carved by ancient forces, the Jurassic lives on. Nature remembers even when we forget. Evolution writes its story in every living thing. We are chapters in that same ancient book. So what do we carry forward from this journey? Not just awe, though awe is deserved. Not just fascination, though fascination is earned. We carry a reminder that we come from a world that never settled for the ground, a world that pushed boundaries, embraced transformation, reached for the sky long before any of us dreamed of doing the same. We are children of resilience, descendants of innovation, inheritors of evolution's courage. In a world today where change feels overwhelming, where uncertainty looms like mountains we cannot climb, let us remember the first animal that spread its wings and dared to fall, and in falling, taught the world to fly. Let us remember the forests that fell only to rise again greener and stronger. Let us remember that life has never feared evolution, only hesitation has. The Jurassic teaches us greatness takes time. Adaptation takes courage. Every leap, no matter how small or shaky, has the power to reshape the future. So let us walk forward not just as spectators of Earth's story, but as participants in its next chapter. Let us protect the wildness that remains, honor the history beneath our feet, and believe in the potential above us. Because if a creature no bigger than a raven could defy gravity and rewrite destiny 150 million years ago, then imagine, truly imagine, what we are capable of today. Has always been a world of possibility. It still is, and like those first wings beating against ancient wind, our greatest leaps are yet to come. Thank you.